Hello and welcome to Inside the Newsroom. I'm Joey Taylor. Inside the Newsroom is a show where we take a look at the important and trending stories happening in KELOLAND and bring in our newsroom staff members to talk about them. Now, these are the same stories you're seeing every day on air and on our website, KELOLAND.com. Let's go ahead and get started. First, a bill to reimburse South Dakota K-12 schools for students on the reduced lunch meal program is headed to the House of Representatives. House Bill 1082 would use money from the state government's general fund to pay for students on reduced meal plans. Now, a fiscal note estimates this would cost about $630,000 a year. Now, Gracie Terrell spent the day digging into this bill and listening to the hearing and appropriations yesterday. She joins us now. Hello, Gracie. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes. First, it passed 7-2. So what are lawmakers saying about this bill?
Yeah, so during the Appropriations Committee yesterday, there were a few lawmakers that had said, that they were once on the reduced lunch plan as well, or free and reduced lunch, and that, this would be a good benefit for South Dakota, an investment into the state, and so those kids can, eat good, grow up, and get good jobs. There were a couple of lawmakers, though, that said they would be voting against the bill because it covers students on reduced lunch. So anybody that's making, or any family, I think when I did the estimates, it was a family of 4 making less than $59,000 a year. And one of the representatives said that it should be the people that don't quite meet that threshold, but are, still lower income, but they are forced to pay that full, $3 to $4 for lunch a day. That's what they would rather see this bill or a bill about school lunch tackled. So they did vote against it, but the sponsor of the bill, Kaden Whitman, she said that schools are obligated to feed the students since they're there. They pay for other things like transportation and different other things within the school, so that school lunches should be included in that.
Perfect. Well, and this isn't the first time we're seeing some sort of version of a school lunch bill brought to the legislature. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this is Kaden Whitman has attempted to bring a bill like this forward for about the past 4 years. Initially, it was to pay for all school lunch for all students, regardless if they are, lower income and they apply for that free and reduced lunch. I believe in a previous committee, she said that would cost around $26 million a year. So she has said that she's parsed it down to as little as she can make it, focusing on those students on the reduced lunch plans. And this is the farthest this bill has gotten. Usually it dies out in that first committee, but it was talked about in House Education. Then it moved to Appropriations since there was quite a large fiscal note attached to that, and that passed. So now it is going to the House floor, and that's as far as a school lunch bill has gotten so far.
Perfect. And talk to me how this would impact budgets. I know you kind of mentioned it a little bit for the schools. I kind of mentioned it for the state with it being, $630,000. But how does this impact both the school and the state budgets?
Yeah, so for the school budgets, the sponsor, Ken Whitman, has said that right now there is, lunch debt that some of the schools are in when these families aren't able to pay that reduced cost. So they kind of pay that, or they have a debt there that either the parents pay. Some schools it has to go to collections, like in Rapid City. But there's, money that is being, not used within the school budget. So she said that this bill would be able to kind of cover those costs so that the schools can use the money that they might be using to kind of cover that debt elsewhere within the school's budget on, different programming and things. And then within the state, like you said, it is $630,000 a year that will be coming out of the general fund. I'm not sure yet if that kind of is roped into the extra about $30 million that we found a couple of weeks ago in appropriations for the state, which the governor said should go towards the big three, which includes education there. Not sure if maybe finding that extra funds maybe influenced the passage of this bill, since it's only $630,000, but that would come out of the state's general fund budget.
Perfect. Well, I know you've been covering this. This is your article right here, folks. If you want to go to our website, you can read more about this, as Gracie did listen to that hearing, broke it down. She's kind of been covering this, so I'm sure, Gracie, we will have you back once, the House floor makes a decision. And I'm going to pull up a QR code for you folks right now. That QR code will take you to KELOLAND.com. From there, you can go to the School Lunch Bill Heads to House Floor article by Gracie. This is an easy way to scan it and pull up that article without having to type in a URL. But we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will look at how the city of Redfield is tackling ongoing childcare issues. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Inside the Newsroom. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back to Inside the Newsroom. Finding childcare is a challenge for many. And now the city of Redfield says they've found a solution to the ongoing challenges they are seeing. I am going to bring in our digital reporter, Marissa Brunkhorst, now. Marissa, thank you so much for joining us. From my understanding, they are converting an old Wells Fargo bank branch into a child care center. Talk to me. You took a look at how all of this is possible. Let's tackle the first obvious question. How are they fundraising to make this possible?
Yeah, so, they've received some financing, so there is a little bit of that. But between grants and just straight up public fundraising, they've raised over $400,000 to put on this daycare. The project in total is going to cost about $1.2 million, but what stood out to me about this story is this community just essentially rallied for this daycare. The woman behind it, Gianna Schleifer, said that, there's a lot of challenges to daycare right now. A lot of their older in-home providers are wanting to retire. A lot of them are kind of closing their daycare, limiting their availabilities. So this is definitely a need for the community. So, yeah, it's pretty, that really stood out to me about the story.
Yeah, well, and folks just saw, right next to you some of the images. Mm-hmm. She seemed to walk us through, and then there were blueprints and other photos and that type of thing. And you kind of mentioned what they're saying about the project. Can you talk to me a little bit more about the need for childcare and what the city is seeing?
Well, childcare is a challenge throughout the state. There's people all over, not just Redfield, are having a hard time finding childcare, finding affordable childcare. This Redfield was originally, they thought, well, what if we created an incentive program, which would be like, incentivizing people to become in-home providers rather than opening a whole new center. They thought, Gianna, in my story, called that more of a Band-Aid fix. But this opportunity came along with a state grant, which would help build the center and kind of get the furniture in there. So that they kind of lucked out that way too. But yeah, I think in combination with a lot of different things, it takes a lot of different pieces to make something like this happen, because of the nature of the child care landscape right now.
Well, and it's kind of like that saying, it takes a village to raise a child. So there's a lot of different moving parts.
Yeah.
Talk to me about when the community can utilize this space, because from what I'm seeing in your web article, this was an ongoing challenge, and they were able to kind of find this answer within about 2 years.
Yeah. They raised that money pretty fast for a project like that in a city of that size with Redfield. They expect to open it in August of this year. They anticipate the center to house about 91 kids. So big draw for that community. They will, service to surrounding towns around that area too. So yeah, August. And what's interesting about this is they are just using the first floor of that bank, and the upstairs is going to be rented out. But Gianna in my story said that they're keeping that, in mind for potential growth later on.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us, folks. I hit the wrong button there. I want to actually hit this one and take you to our QR code. This will take you to KELOLAND.com, and from there you can actually go find the article I just had pulled up of Marissa's, talking more in depth about this old Wells Fargo bank branch and how it will become the city's lone child care center. And don't go anywhere, because still to come, both the state and House Senate vote on legislation, but they have different ways in how they do so. We'll take a look into how lawmakers cast their vote when we come back. Welcome back to Inside the Newsroom. The South Dakota House and Senate both vote on bills, but they have different methods. The House votes by electronic machine, while the Senate uses voice roll call voting. Now, lawmakers and state officials say the electronic vote is quicker in the House, but there is a possible strategic advantage with how the Senate votes.
In the Senate, you can sit back and listen to how people are voting. You can pass until the end if you haven't made up your mind. So it gives you a little more of an opportunity to be strategic about it. Maybe you don't want to vote for a bill unless you need to, and that you have more opportunity to do that in the Senate.
And our digital reporter, Ray Yost, joins us now to give us a deeper look into that. Ray, thank you so much for joining us. I read your article. Talk to me a little bit about just the history of voting electronically.
Well, that was Lieutenant Governor Tony Venhusen, who's not only been a lawmaker and a member of several staffs, he's he's quite a bit of a legislative history buff. And he mentioned he thought it started in at least the late 1960s, early 1970s. And that jives with some information I got through the National Council of Legislatures as well. So we've got a pretty long history in the state of using electronic voting in the House.
Perfect. And when you spoke with lawmakers, how did they react to how they vote, electronically or by voice?
Well, specifically, Senator Stephanie Souter was a member of both the House and the Senate. And after she had gotten used to voting electronically in the House, she said she was a little bit anxious to voice vote in the Senate. I think it's because, she said, everybody knows your vote right away. But it quickly passed, and she got accustomed to voting by the voice vote and said, both systems actually work.
Yeah, well, and I understand that both the House and the Senate both have the ability to use the electronic vote. Is it purely strategy for the Senate, or did they give you a reason for the voice roll call?
I think for in the Senate, there's fewer members in the Senate, so it's a little bit just logistics, because you can take a voice vote probably much easier and efficiently than you can in the House, which has more members. I think it's part of tradition that they just say, hey, it's working, let's change it. But you also heard the Lieutenant Governor mention a little bit of strategy that maybe the Senate has grown accustomed to too, where you don't have to vote right away, and you can hear how someone else votes. Now, that doesn't mean that sways somebody voting every time, but it can offer a little insight to how you think a particular bill or resolution is going to turn out, or it maybe reinforces some of your own study and research that you've done if you haven't had a chance to perhaps talk to every single lawmaker about this bill or resolution.
All right. And are there any changes on the horizon that maybe we should be looking for?
You know, I didn't get that impression. I think the lieutenant governor said, I don't hear anybody really asking for it. The two lawmakers I talked to said, including Senator Zickman, said, nobody's really clamoring for change. We've gotten accustomed to it. We think it's kind of interesting that there's both systems. And I think it's part of the tradition and just the balance that happens throughout the legislative session that folks are accustomed to. And I don't know if enjoy is the right word, but no one foresees any changes.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And folks, I'm going to put up a QR code on your screen right now. If you scan this QR code, it's going to take you to KELOLAND.com. And from there, you can actually go read Ray's article yourself. I'm going to give you a minute to be able to scan this QR code. Again, it's going to take you to our website where you can go read Ray's article more in depth. And don't go anywhere, because after the break, we're going to take a look at how local hockey kids are reacting to the U.S. bringing home gold in the Olympics. Welcome back. For the first time in the history of USA hockey, both the men's and women's team won Olympic gold. Now, that's an achievement inspiring youth hockey teams in Sioux Falls. Anya Joseph caught up with the Sioux Falls Flyers.
So boys and girls are on both of our teams with the Flyers, and so hopefully it inspires the next generation of athletes to hopefully work hard enough to compete.
That inspiration starts when the young players see America's hockey heroes as role models.
I look up to all of them. Most for men's, Quinn Hughes, because he's a really good defender, and I try to watch him to see what I can improve on in my game.
When Megan Keller got that goal and then my favorite player, Taylor Heisey, got the assist, I started crying. It's a huge moment for women everywhere, not just in sports.
The big wins from both the U.S. Olympic hockey teams already made some big aspirations.
I started only 4 years ago, but being able to watch that and keep going, it's really pushing me to make something out of this. I know I'm not going to go D1, but I'm hoping to go D3 and make the most out of it.
I hope I'll be on the Olympics, but if I don't, I just hope I'll be on the Minnesota Wild.
For these young athletes, gold medals aren't just something to celebrate, but something to chase.
All right, and we're going to bring in Anya now. Anya, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Like we mentioned earlier, this is the first time both the U.S. men's and women's team history we've won gold at the Olympics. What was the atmosphere like when you were talking to these young athletes?
Well, I do remember when I got to these squirts, which are the players that are between the ages of 9 and 10, that they were already on the ice. And they were, already on the ice, having a good time, blasting their music. And then I talked to, I believe is one of the coaches who's on the board. And he told me that there were a couple players who were wrapping up their practice in another ice rink, I guess you can say. And they were like 14 years old. And it was a bunch of girl players. And I just remember them coming up to me in a huge line. Like, there were 2 girls that ended up on, that aired on the story, but there were like 5 other girls that were behind them talking to me as well.
Yeah, well, and I love that so much that everyone just kind of wanted to come and talk to you.
Yeah.
You mentioned a line in your story about how gold medals aren't just something to celebrate, but something to chase. Talk to me a little bit about how these athletes are working towards that.
I know that I talked to one of the squirt players. He told me that he, hopes to make it to the Olympics someday, but if he doesn't make it to the Olympics, he wants to play for the Minnesota Wild. I got to talk to another girl who was also on the squirts team, I guess you can say, and she was a little bit more nervous, but she was just happy, and she says that she was having fun out there, and just having fun and building up those goals. To one of the girls, I believe was Isabella, she says that she wants to make it big and go to D3 and go to college with hockey. So I feel like when I was talking to them, they were talking about building their skill set and, starting where they can, obviously, with their game as they want to reach these big goals that they have.
Well, and I know, first, I absolutely love that. And I know hockey is not easy. I've tried to ice skate. I can do it a little bit, and that's even different on hockey skates versus figure skating skates. So kudos to these kids who are flying on the ice. But I know you shifted your schedule around a little bit yesterday to kind of make a later practice for the Flyers. First, talk to me a little bit about what it was like being able to watch them practice and talk to them, but then also talk to me about, as a journalist, sometimes we got to kind of shift for when and where the story is.
To your first question, it was fun watching them out there. I feel like they were just having a good time because for them, who, they're just little kids, they're just happy to be out there on the ice doing their thing. So, and then they had the music in the background, so I could just tell that they were having a good time. So it was fun watching them in their element, and I feel like I caught that on camera, watching them have their little scrimmage. And to your second question, I feel like, yes, I did, shift my schedule around, but I kind of figured just given the story, because I'm talking to kids, there's no way that early morning on a Monday they're out of school playing hockey. So I just kind of figured, but, we made it work. I got a long break, and then I came back, took 2 naps before I came back and went back to work. So, it was pretty nice. It didn't really disrupt my schedule that much.
Perfect. Well, I love to hear that so much. And folks, I'm going to put up a QR code on your screen. This is going to take you to KELOLAND.com if you scan it. And from there, you can actually go to Anya's story. You can watch the package again. You can read more on, what these young athletes are saying, what they want to do. Again, watch the story again, because it's always fun watching kids in hockey. But that is all the time we have for Inside the Newsroom today. Make sure to catch us every weekday at 1 and 3 p.m. Central Time right here on KELOLAND Plus. Until next time, I'm Joey Taylor. Have a great day, everyone.